Good morning, everybody. Today I thought I would take just a few minutes and show you how to get 10 collage materials from one old book. I've always used collage in my mixed media work, in my art journals, and on my canvases, but to just do collage on its own, basically maybe just adding a tiny little bit of paint or some mark making on a canvas or a paper as a work unto itself, I hadn't really explored very much, but it's something that I very much want to start doing more of. And so I'm looking to old books as my source for materials because I like antiques and vintage, and you often see that in my artwork. Things just always kind of look old. But there are so many things in one book that you can put into collage to make a great composition. And let's face it, you can go to the thrift store and get an old book for $1. You can't go to the art store and buy anything for $1. So it's well worth the time that you invest to get these materials out of these old books. And don't ever destroy an old book that has value. But lots of old books from estate sales or thrift shops, if you don't buy them and give them new life, they're going to end up in a landfill somewhere. So don't feel bad about cutting up an old book. And if you feel really, really bad, don't do it. Just do something else. Okay, so I basically went in my attic. I live in the house where I grew up. I'm back here again. And after both of my parents passed, I came back to the house. So in the attic are still things that belong to my parents that I just haven't gotten rid of. And I came across this old book, New Lessons in Arc Welding. Obviously was my dad's. It has some of his writing in the front, which I will keep. But I have no use for an arc welding book. And it has nice, they're kind of heavy-ish, shiny pages, but yet they're, the pages have the toning around the edges. It gives them some age. Good sturdy covers, clean inside. When I look for a book to deconstruct, I'm looking for the type of disconnected spine, that is where the book spine material is not connected to the binding. Right there you can see this part is separate. So, and then right there is where you want to cut to remove the cover. So you basically just take your sharp knife, your X-Acto knife, or a cutting knife like this one. Gotta lay it down. Just go all the way down against the spine. And you can just pull that off. So now you have the binding, the spine, and the back cover. And you're just going to do the same thing in the front. I don't want to cut Dad's writing, so I'm going to be really careful here. Keep the point right down in that groove, just like that, she said. Now depending, sometimes this is going to happen and it's perfectly fine, but I didn't, you see there's like this scrim material, it's like a mesh material that's glued to the binding side. So you can just get all those bits out of there. You can just run your knife down along that edge because it goes underneath the cover paper here on the cover. So now you have your cover separated from the guts of the book. Some of these pages are already starting to come off, but what I like is I like this binding material for collage. It's great texture. So I'm going to try, and usually this is only going to come off in pieces. You very rarely get the whole thing at one time. But this one's coming off pretty good, depending on the book, the age of the book, where it was stored. I mean, books that are stored in really hot, dry places are going to break down. The glue is going to dry out a lot faster, and they'll start to deteriorate. I'm having good luck with this one, though. Check that out. It may break right there, but that's okay. I'm going to get my knife right there and cut that scrim. Hopefully that will help it come off in one piece. There we go. But that's just great texture for collage right there. Both sides, this is always going to be like a brown paper. And then you get the bit of the scrim, and that's just like hardened glue there where it was glued together, and then the little tapes on the top. Oh, I missed a tape. I have to get that one off the spine. But that's just, to me, that's awesomeness right there. And then very often you'll find these tapes. It's like a linen, not a linen, like a twill tape that's stitched along the top, and usually you'll find those at the very top and the bottom that just kind of hold the signatures together. So here you can see the individual, I hope you can see the individual signatures and where they were glued along there, and then it's also there, the signatures then are sewn together. So that's basically how you get it apart. Now if you want to take each signature apart so you have individual signatures, you can go in with your knife and just cut these threads. There's threads right there. Just cut in between each signature, those threads. And sometimes it's a nice way to just store pages for your art journaling or collaging, so you don't have separate sheets going everywhere. It kind of keeps it in a neater stack, if you will. It does make a mess, so be prepared for that. So that's how you get it apart. And then, depending on the age of the book, a lot of the old book covers, this part, the colored part or the outside of the cover, is linen. So if you want that material, you can just score right along these edges here and catch a corner, and it will peel right off. And I will show you that in a minute. You can use the covers separately if you want to take the spine out and then have two covers and the spine. So 10 things, 10 materials that you can use for art journaling, for collage, for your artwork in general, depending on how you like to work and how you like to use your materials. So the first and obvious one is the covers. So this cover came off, actually it was my grandmother's, it was a little hymnal, and it was falling apart, so I saved the cover. This came off a very old book, and you can see it's just dirty and grungy and water spotted, and I love it. And then these came off of books that I just recently deconstructed. So, and this is where I've taken the cover material off, and you can use text. You can use, if you're fortunate enough to have one that has pictures, pieces of the picture, just pieces of the colored, and it's just like a linen, and when you pull it off, you're going to get some of this cardboard backing material, which also, if it was cut into a shape and dry brushed with paint or dripped with ink, this is great texture as well. So it's kind of double duty. Then the reason that I like to do that is because I'm going to build collages on the book, inside of the book covers. And I still have the color along the edge because I cut it in here on the front. so that maintains the cover material over the edge. It's still glued down really well. So I can build my collage on the inside and use the covering for something else. Substrates, number one, build on the covers. Use the covers as your canvas in place of paper. They're great substrates, heavy. You can, when your collage is done, you can mount this to a piece of mat board and pop it in a frame and hang it on the wall. So that's number one. The cover material, that's number two. Here I have some that came off of a red book. If you wanted to just leave that on there, obviously you can, and you could build your collage on this blue background. So covers is one, cover materials is two. Help me keep track, because I'm going to lose track, because that's how I roll. Another option, and I'm not counting this as a separate thing, although I could, is if you leave your deconstructed book cover together as a cover, you can use this and either sew or glue new pages in, and you have a great cover for a junk journal or an art journal or a writing journal. Anything you need a book cover for, you can just construct a new book right inside of one of the books that you've taken apart. Here's an example of a book cover that I left intact, and I just collaged and painted on the top of it. I just put some scrapbooking paper on the inside and decorated the back, and at some point that will be a cover for a new art journal for me. So it's fun, it's economical as heck, and definitely worth doing, and you're saving the landfills at the same time. So this, I think, is probably my favorite, is the spine. So take apart the book, you have all these spine pieces, and I love the old ones the best. These are 60s books. This one is, I think, was a 40s, but this was like from the early 20s. But you can tear these into little pieces, bigger pieces. You could cut shapes out of it. You can use the text. You can tear long strips. It's just really, really cool collage material. So there's lots of things you can do with the spine material. So that's three. So once you get done with the cover and the spine and all the pieces, parts that go with, oh no, one more thing with the spine. As all of these, we talked about these pieces that come from the inside of the spine. Also, just really cool texture for collages. So here's the tapes that I was talking about. This big piece will look really awesome in a collage. The long pieces, which obviously you can break or tear, cut into smaller pieces. So, and this is just, when I ripped a page out of a book, it ripped really jaggedy, and then I continued to take more pages out, and this just fell out, this being the part that was bound into the book. And I just thought, what a cool, jaggedy shaped piece of paper. So I will use that somewhere. So sometimes you just get lucky. So anyways, the inside of the spine would be number 4. Yeah. And you can see I just have a little tub that I keep all these little bits and pieces of book spines in. And I use them in my mixed media all the time, but I'm going to use them also in the collages that I do on the book covers. So then we get to the inside of the book, and very often you will just find 2, 3, sometimes if you're lucky, pages in the front of the book that are just blank pages. Nothing on them. And the old books, the paper is just toned so nicely around the edges, just browned a little bit. And so I always keep these because I love to cut these up and use them as collage. I can paint on them first, I can just cut them into pieces, you know, strips, punched out shapes. You just have instant age, and even the pages, like the forward pages or whatever, a lot of times will be blank on the back, and I save those too just because I don't care if the text is on the back, it's just going to get glued down. So I have a whole stack of those, and these are just from, I think I did 3 books yesterday, and I got all these blank pages. So number 5, and the book text, obviously we all go to our old books to just grab text for collage, for artwork, for making little envelopes, for a ton of things. And like I said, I like to just kind of keep the signatures together, and then when I need a page, you know, I can just grab a signature instead of a million, not a million, but a big stack of, it's going to be a million pretty soon at the rate I'm deconstructing books, but it's just easier to store and handle, I think. And then when I'm ready and I want a piece, I can just grab a signature and pull a page off. So that's 6. And then text, several different text resources. I like to sometimes go through if the chapters, stories, in this case it was a children's book of classics. Not that I'm going to necessarily put the text Don Quixote on my page, but I might cut it in half and turn it sideways and just use it as a design element, not necessarily as a word. So I try and keep the larger text from the page titles. Sometimes you'll find, in addition to the contents is usually big, you get little numbers that look really cool just layered on top of another group of collage elements, little illustrations, and more text. So that's number 7, large text and little numbers. We'll throw that in there. And then when you get lucky, the book I took apart yesterday had these great chapter numbers. Usually it's spelled out, the word is spelled out. You don't often find the larger size font for the chapter numbers. So I went through and saved every one of them from 1 to 25. So look for large numbers as chapter headers. So I guess I'm counting that as 7 even. Am I at 7? See, now I don't even remember. It's 7, I think. But it's probably not fair because it's not in every book, but you will find large text in every book, so you can lump that in with the large text, I guess. And here again, same thing as far as illustrations. Not every book has illustrations, which is why I love children's books and history books, like textbooks, because they do have illustrations. So I just found these were in a history book. It was an H.G. Wells, some kind of history. I found 2 of them. And then this was from the same children's book as these, the Alice in Wonderland, and this one was Christmas Carol. I'm not sure what this one was from, but I really like the blue on here. It'll look good with, it won't end up being this exact photograph when I'm done layering stuff on top of it, but you'll see bits of the black and the blue poking through. Yeah, I think that was 10. Some got a little mixed up with other ones, but regardless of the number, suffice it to say, there's just a ton of material in old books if you like to use collage in your art journals, or to make collage as wall art or lean art, as I like to call it, because I think little collages, especially on these book covers, just look so sweet, just leaning against a wall up on a shelf or in a vignette of other pieces. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and go deconstruct a book and make some art. See you next time. Bye.